The chamber goes silent the moment my name is read out, and I know before the speaker even finishes the sentence that something has gone wrong. I am standing in the human delegation box on the lower ring of the council chamber, a half-circle of light suspended in the middle of a station older than my planet's written history. Around me, delegates from 11 other species watch through glass, gas, and shifting color patterns that pass for expressions in their own worlds. My name is Daniel Wren. I am the youngest aide ever assigned to Earth's diplomatic mission, and until this moment, I thought today was going to be routine. It is not routine. The speaker, a tall being made of layered light called a threll, turns its head toward the human seats and announces, in a voice translated into flat, toneless English, that humanity has been formally classified as a non-threat species. Tier lowest. A client world. We are, according to the Council's ranking system, too young, too small, and too fractured to be considered capable of defending ourselves in the wider galaxy. Laughter ripples through the chamber. Not loud, not cruel exactly, but unmistakable. Small clicks and hums and shifts in light that I have learned, after 3 years here, mean amusement. I feel my face go hot. Around me, the rest of the human delegation sits frozen, jaws tight, eyes forward. We were told this might happen. We were told to expect it. Somehow, hearing it out loud, in front of every species we have ever tried to build trust with, still feels like a blow to the chest. The speaker continues. Because of our classification, humanity will be assigned a guardian empire, a stronger species tasked with protecting our system from external threats until we prove ourselves capable of self-defense. This is apparently meant as a kindness, a mercy extended to a species too weak to survive on its own. I want to stand up and argue. I want to remind this chamber that humanity clawed its way off one small planet in less than a century, that we have survived wars and plagues and our own worst instincts and still built ships that can cross the void. But I am not authorized to speak. I am an aide. My job is to watch, listen, and report. So I watch. The session moves on to other business, trade routes, mining rights, disputes between systems I have never heard of. I stop listening. I keep replaying the moment the word week was applied to my entire species, translated into a dozen alien tongues, broadcast across a galaxy that will remember it long after I am gone. When the session finally ends, the chamber empties in slow, drifting waves. Delegates rise from their seats, engage in quiet conversation, and begin filing toward the exits. I gather my notes, my chest still tight with something between anger and shame, and start toward the human section's private corridor. That is when someone touches my arm. I turn, expecting a colleague, and instead find myself looking at a delegate I do not recognize. Tall, silver-skinned, wrapped in a dark robe that seems to absorb the light around it rather than reflect it. The insignia on the robe's collar marks this being as part of the Vashtir Compact, one of the oldest and most reclusive empires in the Council, a species that rarely speaks in open session and almost never approaches outsiders directly. I do not know this delegate's name. I have never spoken to a Vashtir before. Most humans haven't. They keep to themselves, vote quietly, and leave before the social gatherings begin. The delegate leans in close, closer than is comfortable, and speaks in a voice so low the station's ambient translator almost fails to catch it. You have doomed us all. I blink. I am certain I misheard. I ask them to repeat it, but the delegate is already stepping back, already turning away, moving quickly toward a private exit reserved for senior council members. I call after them, but they do not stop, do not look back, and within seconds they have vanished through a door that seals behind them with a soft hiss. I stand there in the emptying chamber, alone, replaying 5 words that make no sense. I do not tell anyone right away, not because I want to keep it secret, but because I genuinely do not know what to make of it. It could be nothing. A mistranslation, a strange idiom that lost its meaning crossing from one language into another. I have seen the Council's translation systems fail before, turning simple greetings into accidental insults, turning compliments into threats. But something about the way the Vashtir delegate looked at me stays with me for the rest of the day. Not anger, not mockery, fear. A deep, quiet fear, the kind that does not announce itself with shouting, the kind that hides behind careful words and quick exits. That night back in my quarters aboard the station, I pull up everything the Council's public archive has on the Vashtir Compact. It is not much. They joined the Council long before humanity discovered fire, and in all that time they have said very little about themselves. No open records of their homeworld's location. No public accounts of their history. Just trade agreements, quiet votes, and centuries of silence. I message an old contact of mine, a retired xenologist named Grace Holloway who spent 30 years studying alien cultures before she left the diplomatic service to write books nobody reads. She is blunt, sharp, and has never cared much for official protocol, which is exactly why I trust her. I tell her what happened, the classification, the whisper, the 5 words. She does not respond for almost 6 hours. When she finally does, her message is short. Come to my apartment. Bring nothing electronic, I mean it. I go. Grace's apartment is on the outer ring of the station, in a section reserved for retired personnel, cluttered with books and old data crystals and star charts pinned to every wall. She meets me at the door, pulls me inside, and locks it behind us before saying a word. She tells me to sit. I sit. She paces instead of sitting herself, arms crossed, clearly working through something in her head before she is ready to share it out loud. Finally she speaks. The Vashtir do not talk to outsiders, she says. Not because they are rude, because they are careful. Every word they choose is deliberate. If one of them broke protocol to whisper something to a junior human aide in the middle of a crowded chamber, it was not an accident, and it was not nothing. I ask her what she thinks it means. She hesitates, then pulls a heavy, old-fashioned book down from a shelf, the kind bound in actual paper, something almost nobody uses anymore. She flips through it until she finds a page marked with a strip of cloth and turns it toward me. It is a star map, old, faded, covering a section of the galaxy far from known human space. Grace explains that decades ago, before she retired, she was given limited access to a restricted portion of the Council's historical archive while researching a book on extinct civilizations. Most of what she found there was standard: catalogs of dead worlds, records of natural disasters, the usual quiet tragedies of a galaxy billions of years old. But one entry stood out. A species referred to only by a code designation, not a name, because their true name had apparently been deliberately erased from every accessible record. According to the fragments Grace managed to piece together, this species emerged on a single small world, much like ours. They were considered unremarkable at first. Small numbers, limited technology, constant internal conflict. The Council of that era, whichever version of it existed at the time, classified them exactly the way humanity was classified today. Weak, in need of protection, not worth serious concern. They were wrong. Grace tells me that within a few centuries, that species had spread across dozens of systems, not through conquest exactly, but through sheer refusal to stay contained. Every attempt to limit them, guide them, or protect them from themselves seemed to accelerate something in their culture instead of calming it. They did not respond well to being told what they could and could not do. The more other species tried to manage them, the more determined they became to prove they needed no managing at all. Eventually, something happened. The records are vague here, either genuinely lost or deliberately hidden, but the result was clear enough. An entire portion of the galaxy was left changed, and not for the better. Whole systems that once supported life had gone quiet. Whether through war or some catastrophic event the species triggered, or both, nobody left a clear account. What remained was a warning encoded not in words but in policy, a quiet, unofficial rule among the oldest empires in the Council. Never underestimate a species based on what it lacks. Watch instead for how it behaves when it feels cornered. I ask Grace if she thinks the Vashtir believe humanity is that species come again. She shakes her head slowly. Not exactly, she says. She thinks the Vashtir are old enough to have witnessed that history firsthand or something close to it. And she thinks what frightened that delegate was not humanity itself, but the decision made today in that chamber. A young, proud, capable species just told in front of the entire galaxy that it is weak, small, in need of a guardian. Grace leans forward, her voice quiet now. Species do not usually break because they are weak, she says. They break because they are told they are weak while knowing, deep down, that they are not. That gap between how a people see themselves and how they are treated by others, she says, is where real trouble tends to start. I ask her what she thinks will happen now. She admits she does not know, but she says the timing worries her. Word travels fast in the council. Other empires, ones far less careful than the Vashtir, are already treating today's classification as an opportunity. She has heard murmurs, second-hand and unconfirmed, of smaller powers testing the edges of human territory in the past few hours alone, probing patrols near the outer colonies, trade demands suddenly growing sharper, less polite. As if the ink on the council's ruling was still wet and already being used as permission. I leave Grace's apartment with more questions than I arrived with, and a growing, uncomfortable feeling that the whisper in the chamber was not a warning about what humanity might become. It was a warning about what the galaxy was about to do to us, now that we had been marked safe to push. Over the following days, I do what I can with the limited access my position allows. I request meetings, get quietly turned away by senior staff too busy with the Guardian Empire arrangements to speak with an aide. I file a report to Earth Command relaying what Grace told me, careful to mark it as unconfirmed, second-hand historical speculation rather than fact. I do not want to start a panic based on an old book and a 5-word whisper, but I also cannot make myself ignore it. 3 days after the ruling, I am called into a private briefing with the head of the human delegation, a calm, steady woman named Elena Marsh, who has led our mission here for almost a decade. She has read my report. She wants to know more about the source. I tell her everything: Grace, the star map, the unnamed species, the Vashtir delegate's face in the moment before they turned and walked away. Elena listens without interrupting, her expression unreadable in the way that only someone who has spent years in rooms like this can manage. When I finish, she is quiet for a long moment. Then she tells me something I did not expect. She says she has heard similar rumors from 2 other sources this week, unrelated to mine, unrelated to each other. A trade envoy who overheard a private conversation between 2 senior council staff worried aloud that the ruling had been a mistake. A junior officer from an allied species who mentioned, almost in passing, that older empires in the council have a private term for young species who are underestimated and then mistreated. Roughly translated, it means the sleeping ones. Elena tells me that whatever is happening, it is bigger than one whispered warning in an empty chamber. Something in the council's older institutional memory is uneasy about this decision, uneasy enough that it is leaking out in careful, fragmented pieces from people who are otherwise trained never to speak carelessly. She asks me what I think humanity should do. It is not really a question meant for someone my age and my rank, but she asks it anyway, and I think that is deliberate. I think she wants to hear it from someone who was standing in that chamber, who heard the laughter, who felt what it meant to be told, in front of the whole galaxy, that we do not matter enough to defend ourselves. I tell her the truth. I do not think we should try to prove the council wrong by force. I do not think that is who we want to be, and if the old stories Grace found are even partly true, that path leads somewhere none of us want to go. But I also do not think we should quietly accept the label they have given us. Weak is not the same as safe, and safe is not the same as protected. I think the most dangerous thing we could do right now is nothing at all, and let other species decide what our silence means. Alina studies me for a long moment, then nods slowly, like she has been waiting to hear someone else say it out loud. Over the following weeks, I watched the shape of the galaxy shift in small, quiet ways that most people outside the diplomatic corps will never notice. Alina begins requesting private meetings with delegations from species who have historically been friendly to Earth, not to ask for weapons or alliances, but simply to talk, to remind them that humanity intends to remain present, engaged, and unwilling to disappear quietly into the role of a protected client world. The Guardian Empire assigned to oversee human space turns out to be a distant, bureaucratic power more interested in trade concessions than actual protection. And Alina handles that relationship carefully, giving away as little real independence as the terms of the ruling allow. I never speak to the Vashtir delegate again. I look for them at every session, every gathering, but they do not attend in person after that day, sending junior representatives in their place instead, as if the compact itself has decided to step back and watch from a distance rather than risk another moment of exposure. Grace continues her research quietly, off the record, digging through whatever fragments of the old archives she can still access through contacts who owe her favors. She never finds a name for the vanished species, never finds a clear account of what exactly happened at the end of their story. Some records, she tells me, were simply never meant to survive. But she finds one more thing, buried in a footnote of an old council session transcript, so old the translation software struggles with the archaic phrasing. A single line, attributed to an unnamed Vashtir representative from centuries before either of us was born, recorded during a debate about how young species should be classified and treated. The line reads, roughly translated, "The ones we call weak are not the ones who threaten us. The ones who tell them so in front of everyone are." I think about that line often. I think about the laughter in the chamber, the flat translated voice of the speaker reading out our classification like a sentence, the silver-robed delegate leaning close enough to whisper 5 words meant only for me. I do not know, even now, exactly what the Vashtir fear. I do not know if the old story Grace uncovered has anything real to do with humanity at all, or if it is simply the closest thing an ancient, careful species could find to explain a feeling too old and too tangled to put into plain words. What I do know is this. Humanity was called weak in front of the galaxy, and instead of breaking under that word, we have spent every day since quietly refusing to become smaller because of it. We show up. We speak when we are allowed to. We remember every slight, every dismissive glance, every alien voice that laughed at the sound of our name being ranked last. And somewhere out past the edge of known space, an empire old enough to remember things the rest of the galaxy has long forgotten watches human ships move through the dark, and waits, quietly, to see what kind of people we choose to become now that the whole galaxy believes we have nothing left to prove. I think about the Vashtir delegate's face sometimes, late at night, when the station is quiet and the stars outside my window do not care what any council anywhere has decided about anyone. I think about the fear in their eyes and the 5 words they risked everything to say to a stranger. "You have doomed us all." I still do not know if they meant it as a warning about what we might do to the galaxy, or a warning about what the galaxy is about to do to us. Maybe, in the end, it was both. Maybe that is the whole point. A species pushed hard enough, mocked loudly enough, underestimated long enough, does not stay predictable forever, no matter which side of that equation ends up regretting it first. All I know is that I was there the day the council called humanity weak, and I was there the day an old, careful voice leaned close enough to whisper the truth nobody else in that chamber was brave enough to say out loud. We have not doomed anyone yet. But for the first time since I stepped off Earth and into that chamber full of strangers, I understand, deep in my chest, that the galaxy is no longer laughing quite as loudly as it did that first day. And somewhere, in the quiet corridors of an empire older than memory, They are still watching us, still waiting, still afraid of exactly what kind of people we are going to choose to be.